Good morning. Please make your way into the ballroom so we can get started on time. Please make your way to the ballroom. Have a seat. Our program will begin momentarily. Please take this time to silence all communication devices. Our program will begin in just a moment. Thank you. Please welcome the 81st President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Reno Mayor Hillary Sheeby.
Good morning. How are you guys feeling? You feeling good? Okay, good. Let me see. I got to just take a roll call here. All right. Hi. How are you? Did you guys love the embassy last night? The British Embassy? Pretty fabulous, huh? So thank you, please, a huge round of applause for Mayor Bowser for doing that for us. It was super nice. All right, how many of you are coming to the White House with us? Oh, you're gonna love it. Okay, good, all right. Just checking you all out. You look fantastic, all right. So I hope you guys are excited. We have a very, very special guest in the house. I am incredibly excited. I'm just wondering, I think we've got some monitors that are down, so give me a minute. They're coming. All right. You know, I could totally impromptu, but then I get in trouble because I said it in my out loud voice, right? All right. So anyway, I am honored to introduce the 71st United States Secretary of State. He has been at the forefront of shaping American foreign policy. He has held senior foreign policy positions over 2 decades under President Obama and President Clinton. The challenges we've faced this year have highlighted a crucial realization for us as mayors. Global issues often have direct and significant impacts on our local communities. We are not insulated from the conflicts and decisions that happen well beyond our country's borders. And that also works the other way too. America's cities are gaining an increasing influence and role in solving global issues. The U.S. State Department has recognized this, and in 2022, Secretary Blinken established the department's first subnational diplomacy unit and appointed the first special representative for cities and state diplomacy. And I know you guys all know Nina. She's back there. Give Nina a huge round of applause. Love you, Nina. She's a force. You know, and Nina was a mayor too, so she's the perfect person to head up all the mayors to do this. The team focuses on giving local leaders a voice in the global conversation. And last year, they hosted the first ever Cities Summit of the Americas in Denver. Who all came to that? Raise your hand. If you didn't go, you gotta go next year. It was fantastic. Anyway, it is absolutely my pleasure to introduce the one and only Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. Come on out, my friend.
Thank you.
Hi. Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hillary, great to be with you.
We are so honored to have you. This is like a special treat. It really is. It is so nice to have you. Just so everyone knows, you should give him a huge round of applause. He is the only Secretary of State to come to the United States Conference of Mayors. We love you.
Thank you.
And it's not like you're busy or anything.
Not once, but twice. No, we have a few things going on, but so do all of you.
Well, so you came last year too, and it was really great. We had a wonderful sit down, but I was kind of surprised to hear a lot of people say, well, what exactly does the State Department do? So let's start there.
Well, first and foremost, what we're doing every single day is we're trying to be out there around the world helping to actually solve problems for the American people. That's our number one job. Their security, their prosperity, their opportunity. And that translates into a lot of things that may not be so obvious, but are actually having an impact, I hope, for the good in cities around the country. Jobs, to say one thing. We're out there every single day advocating for American businesses and American workers around the world so that companies that are based in your cities that may be exporting can do it effectively and can cut through red tape in countries around the world. So that at the same time, other countries, businesses that want to invest in the United States and invest in businesses in your cities, they're able to do that effectively. We can point them in the right direction and help them navigate democracy. That's just one thing that actually has a direct impact on cities. But you know, you said something, Hillary, that I think is exactly right. Pretty much everything that we are trying to do around the world for the United States, for our citizens, it actually starts in our cities, and that's something we can talk about.
Well, yeah, we know. Mayors always say that. We're like, we are at ground zero. And we really are, because we're the closest to our communities.
Exactly.
So, but obviously you think that mayors play a critical role in the State Department. Explain to mayors like what that looks like. So how can we help you?
First of all, what you're doing every day is making a huge difference for us around the world. So for example, we're trying to tackle climate change. The decisions that you're making in your cities, if you decide to electrify your bus fleet, if you decide to compost waste, all of these decisions are actually having a profound global impact. First of all, it shows our own leadership. Second of all, as a practical matter, it's helping to get to solutions. We see that every single day around the world. There's something else that's really powerful that I've seen. And you were talking about the City Summit of the Americas in Denver. I'm convinced from all the time I spent traveling around the world and traveling around this country that for any given problem, somewhere, someone probably has the answer, or at least the beginning of an answer. And more often than not, it's actually happening in a city, it's happening with a mayor, because you're all problem solvers. It's the wonderful thing. Politics is less of an issue at a subnational level. Yeah. Figuring out the answers to problems, that's job number one. The more we can connect people, including connecting you with us and connecting you with colleagues around the world, the more I think we can sort of short-circuit the process of finding an answer to a given problem. So that's an incredibly powerful thing. It's why we did the City Summit. It's why we actually have this office that Nina Shigian is leading for subnational diplomacy.
Yeah, love it. And I think it's been really, really effective, because I think it's made mayors think so globally. And that is so critical, especially economic development. I mean, it touches us on so many different levels. I think you have done a phenomenal job, really. And Nina's been incredible. And Daniel, love Daniel. He has a brand new baby. We have
a great team. And,
you do.
But
you do.
You know, as Nina, as you mentioned, of course, is deputy mayor in Los Angeles, so she knows from both sides. And we worked together back in the Clinton administration on foreign policy, so she's got this from both angles, and it's really powerful. But think for a minute just about some of the things we're trying to do. Let's say you care about climate change, and this gets back to what the State Department's doing. We represent in the United States maybe 15% of global emissions. So even if we did everything right at home, that still leaves 85% around the world. We're out there, John Kerry's out there, trying to find ways forward to make sure that other countries, other cities, other states are stepping up. And of course, sometimes national governments may be a little slow on the uptake. That's where cities come in. That's where states come in. If you care about, as we all do, the pandemic, well, again, even if we did everything right in the United States, if you have a pandemic that's out there and continues to be out there somewhere else, you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain. So the State Department is working every single day to strengthen global health security, to make sure that countries have what they need to be prepared, hopefully to prevent, but if not to deal with the next pandemic, so it doesn't come here and bite us. Yeah. These phones we're carrying in our pockets every day, and all that technology, and now AI, the way they get used, the rules, the norms, the standards by which they're used, they tend to get decided in windowless rooms somewhere around the world with lots of other countries. We're not only at the table, we're at the head of the table, and that means that the way those rules get decided and get shaped, hopefully, will be more reflective of things we care about, like privacy, like making sure that technology is not used to hold people down, but to lift them up. So in each one of these ways and so many more, the things that we're doing around the world have an impact here. But as I said, it goes the other way too. What you're doing every single day in your cities has a huge impact around the world. And the leadership that you're showing, that's also leadership for the United States. And I hear that everywhere I go. And I hear people, counterparts, talking about something that's happening not just in New York or Washington or Los Angeles, in Reno, just for one example. And the incredible work that you've done on technology, on climate, that resonates around the world.
Yeah, and I think mayors, we are sort of that unified national voice, right? So I would agree with you, absolutely. So one of the things we talked about, and I was so impressed, because you really understand this, And but we've been talking about this all year with the mental health crisis, with fentanyl, opioids.
Yeah.
And so, you were very honest, and I honestly, I was like, wow, you were impressive. Let's talk a little bit about that and what that supply chain looks like, because it's crippling our cities.
I know you, almost all of you are living this and feeling this, both as mayors, but also as mothers, as fathers, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers. We've seen the impact of this in virtually every community in this country. You all know this. Number one killer of Americans aged 18 to 49. Number one killer of Americans.
Number one. Did you know that?
Fentanyl. Not cancer, not car accidents, not violence. It's fentanyl. So we have a profound responsibility. If this is the number one killer of Americans 18 to 49, we have to be doing something about it across the entire chain that brings fentanyl from one place, or at least its ingredients, right here to the United States. So we've actually organized the world on this. This summer, we built a coalition, now more than 140 countries and organizations, to work together to tackle this problem. And one of the reasons that all these countries came together is we were able to say to them, look, we've been the canary in the coal mine. We've had the impact of fentanyl and synthetic opioids for a while here. We've seen the devastation it's wreaking, but now we're seeing it pop up in other places. And to the extent that markets even got saturated here, the criminal enterprises that are engaged in this, they're trying to make markets elsewhere, in Europe, in Asia, in Latin America, close to home. Second, when we had the City Summit of the Americas, it was incredibly powerful because we had 250 or so mayors from around the hemisphere. And we spent some time talking about fentanyl. I got to meet with local officials in Denver, including the mayor, the chief of police, and heard about the efforts that are being undertaken there to deal on the ground with the problem. But then we connected the dots. How does it actually wind up in Denver or any of your cities in the first place? And one of the ways that it does that is, as many of you know, the ingredients that go into making fentanyl, the so-called chemical precursors. A lot of them right now are being made in China, and then they get illicitly shipped, typically to Mexico, synthesized into fentanyl, and then it winds up in the United States. So President Biden was determined to do something about this. Now, we can go after Chinese companies, and we can go after individuals who've been engaged in this illicit transfer of these chemical ingredients. But the best way to actually get results, ideally, is through cooperation. So we spent months engaged with the Chinese in advance of the president meeting with Xi Jinping in San Francisco just a few months ago on this. And we made clear to China that it had a responsibility. Even if it didn't care about what was happening in the United States, more and more countries around the world were getting deeply concerned about synthetic opioids. And if China was seen as part of the problem, that wasn't going to be good for them. If they were seen as part of the solution, that could be a very positive thing. Anyway, cut to the chase. The agreement that President Biden and President Xi reached in San Francisco led now to China taking a much more positive role in doing something about this. So they issued rules and regulations making clear to their companies that they can't be in the business of taking these ingredients and shipping them off to Mexico or anywhere else. Second, and even more important, they actually cracked down on the businesses that were doing this and took down dozens of companies.
Good.
Finally, they've agreed to establish with us a working group so that we can track this every single day. And that means that as a result of this diplomacy, as a result of what President Biden did in pressing the Chinese on this and now having cooperation, we're getting results. And those results, I'm convinced, are going to translate into all of our cities, all of our states, hopefully with fewer of these chemicals getting to Mexico, and so less fentanyl coming into the United States.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think and also what I'm hearing is that there were other countries that weren't at the table.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that is changing.
Now they are. Mexico is now playing an increasingly leading role in this, really engaged in this global coalition that we put together, really engaged with us every single day in trying to take down the criminal enterprises that are engaged in this. And with Mexico, it's both a matter of policing, and we've been working very closely with them, but there are other things that are really important. The entire regulatory scheme that they have, to make sure that they have the rules and regulations in place to do something about the illicit manufacturing of, the illicit trade in these chemicals. And that cooperation is, I think, better than it's ever been. Now, it's a big challenge because, 2 years ago, we seized, and that doesn't mean we got everything. We seized enough fentanyl to kill every single American citizen. That is the scope of the problem. That's why cooperation that we get through diplomacy with China, with Mexico, with other countries is so important.
Wow, that is unbelievable. So let's talk a little bit about Ukraine. Last night, I met a mayor from
Lviv.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was really, I think sometimes we forget, obviously, because as mayors, we're so local and doing the things that we do in our own cities. But how can we sort of support them as mayors? And, talk a little bit about Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, first, I think what you all have done already is incredible because, and I was talking to Tom Cochran about this just before we came on, I think almost from day one, the connections between mayors, sister cities, between the United States and Ukraine, that solidarity, the fact that they know that they have so many supporters, and of course, many of you have Ukrainian-American communities. That's important as well. But that solidarity makes a big difference. And let me just say this, it seems like it's half a world away, across a big ocean. So why should we care about this? And I guess I'd say two things. First, I think most of us don't like the notion of a big country coming in and bullying one of its neighbors. That sort of gets at us, and we don't like it. But even more important is this. If you allow someone like Putin to do this with impunity, to just go in, try to redraw the borders of another country by force. In fact, what he wanted to do was wipe it off the map, eliminate it, erase it as an independent country, subsume it into Russia. If you allow that Pandora's box to open in one place, chances are it's going to open in lots of other places. And would-be aggressors in other parts of the world are going to see that, and if they see that there's no response, they'll think, well, I can get away with that too. And Putin himself, if he had not been stopped in trying to do what he was trying to do in Ukraine, almost certainly would not have stopped at Ukraine. Might have gone after other countries, including countries in NATO, where we have responsibilities to actually come in and protect them. Right now, it's Ukrainians fighting on the ground for their country, for their future, for their freedom. We and dozens of other countries are supporting them. We're not in this alone. We have 50 countries. And, Hillary, we talk a lot sometimes about, the United States is spending all this money, doing all of this stuff overseas, no one else is doing it. In the case of Ukraine, yes, we have invested a lot, thanks to the generosity of our taxpayers, bipartisan support in Congress, but other countries have actually done more. We put in about $70 billion, $75 billion into this over the last couple of years. Our partners and allies, over $100 billion. And right now, the president, as some of you know, is trying to get some additional support for Ukraine from Congress in the supplemental budget request. The money that we're requesting and that will go to supporting Ukraine's military, almost all of that will actually be invested in the United States, including in a number of your cities, to invest in the equipment, the military equipment, the weapons, our defense industrial base, which can then be provided to Ukraine. So I hope, more than hope, it's really necessary that this happens, but your support, your solidarity, it resonates in Ukraine. And mayors in Ukraine, just like here, are really the heart of the country. And their knowledge that so many of you are with them makes a big difference.
Yeah, it is so true. It really is. I could tell emotionally he was in, such a different space.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking.
Well, it's living with that every day. I mean, every single day, the Russians continue to launch barrages of rockets and missiles and trying to destroy the infrastructure, hitting a lot of people. So what we've done and what other countries have done is really important for the future of that country.
So speaking of emotionally, and like I said, we're doing a lot on mental health. How do you take care of your mental health? Your job is not stressful at all. So talk a little bit about that. Because I learned something about him, and it's very cool. And I know that I bet you anything this is what you're going to say. So you tell me. I want to know, how do you take care of your mental health?
Well, I've got a few things going for me. First of all, and I suspect it's the same for many of you. I've got an amazing team working with me. For every hour that I work, they're working 2 or 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
So that makes a huge
It's
difference.
so true, right? Right?
We all know that.
Yeah.
Second, just in terms of keeping things real, I have 2 young children at home. I've got a soon-to-be 5-year-old and a soon-to-be 4-year-old. So if anything's going to keep
You're
you
busy.
real,
You're
right?
even busier
It's
than
that.
we thought.
Yeah. In fact, one time, about a year ago, my wife was telling her kids, "Oh, Daddy's going to be on TV," and they said, "No, we want to watch Sesame Street." So that keeps things in
It's probably a good thing.
And then, you know, everyone has their hobbies, their pastimes, something to come back to. For me, it's music. And
Did you guys know this? He was on Jeopardy the other night. I did not know this. And he's like,
I didn't either.
He goes,
Nobody
I'm
told me
sure
that.
that they did not get the question right.
Yeah.
And I said, no, they actually 2 people got the question right. But I thought it was so interesting because they had a picture of you at the White House and you were jamming on the guitar. And so I didn't know that about you. So you were a musician.
We had this great event at the State Department. One of the things that we do is we try to connect people around the world through sports and through the arts, through music, through other arts. Music's, for me at least, the best connector. It breaks down barriers everywhere. Doesn't matter if there's a language barrier, a geographic barrier, even a political barrier. It connects people. And so we're engaged in music diplomacy. We, going back many years, have sent American musicians around the world on different programs, and it's done incredible things for the United States. People really respond to that. So we had a big event at the State Department for some new initiatives we were taking in music diplomacy. We had a lot of performers. And look, the truth is the event was running late. We needed to clear the room, and I thought the fastest way to get people out of the room would be for me to go up there and play. So that's what we did.
I love it. I love it. What are your music tastes?
Oh, I'm sort of grounded in blues.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of stuck in the 1970s.
Okay.
Hope there are a few people. Yes, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. I love that. I absolutely love that. Okay, so I know that you're incredibly busy, so we'll wrap this up. But, okay, one question. Here we go. Let's see. Okay, Taylor Swift or James Taylor?
Oh, well, here's the great thing. They played together.
Ah!
So I take them both.
Oh, you are.
Hey.
One last question. That is fantastic. See, you aced that. I thought I was going to
I didn't get that one
stump
in
you.
advance either.
No, we didn't. You didn't know I was going to ask. But what about, you ever think about running for office?
I'm leaving that to all of you. I so admire people who put themselves out there as most of you have in running for office. I got to tell you, I've worked for President Biden for more than 20 years. It's been the greatest privilege of my career. I started working for him in the Senate, then when he was vice president with President Obama, and now as president. And he's an extraordinary person to work for. And the back and forth, the conversations, the discussions, and every once in a while, an argument where there's a disagreement. And every once in a while, he'll say, when we're having an argument, it's going back and forth, he'll look at me and say, "How many votes did you get?" That pretty much stops the conversation right there. So I admire all of you, because putting yourself out there in that way, especially now, in these days, I know how challenging that is, how tough that is, but thank you for doing it. Every single day, what you're doing, it's making a difference, not just for your own constituents, it's making a difference for the country, and I really believe it's making a difference for the world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And we are so grateful that you came, and honestly, please give him a huge round of applause. I'm such a fan. I am such a fan.
Right back at you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Look at, you got a standing
All
O.
right.
That's hard for mayors. We're pretty.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Y'all got to do better than that. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Justin Bibb. I'm mayor of the great city of Cleveland, Ohio. Also home of the rock and roll capital of the world as well, too. And I'm proud to be the chair of the Tourism, Arts, Parks, Sports, Entertainment Committee for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. That's a long committee name, isn't it? We have some great panelists here this morning. I'm excited to be chairing TAPES this year for the conference. And one of my big goals as chair of the committee is to really dive deeper in looking at the intersection of arts, but also sports, and how it drives social impact in our respective cities. Before we kick off our conversation, we have an amazing leader here today, Nolan Bevins, CEO of Americans for the Arts. They sponsor our awards here for the TAPES committee every year for the conference. They did a big report this year, and Nolan's going to give us a deep dive on that report. Nolan?
Thank you so very much. My pleasure to be here with you. It's also my pleasure to be here with all of you, particularly the mayors and also the awardees. But thank you also to the audience out there. Yes, we just finished what we would call Arts and Economic Prosperity Study number 6. We've been doing it for, as you can imagine, several years now with the number 6. We do it every 5 years. And what we found this year was really some very transformative information. A lot of it's consistent with what we've done in the past, but it's also continuing to emphasize the important value of mayors such as yourself contributing to the arts and the art in your communities. So what are some big numbers? We did 373 regional areas that we studied from. What that means is we have local data and we also have national data. And what this national data indicates in some of the other big numbers is that the arts is about a $151.7 billion industry, right? That is too big to fail when you think about our communities and the impact that they're having there. We did it across 50 states to include Puerto Rico, again, emphasizing the data. And the bottom line I would say here is that the arts are businesses themselves, right? So when you think about art within a community, it is a business. It's generating income. It has employees. It's paying taxes in that particular aspect of it. But here's the real number that I like to leave with you. It's about 2.6 million jobs. Right? So I often tell the expression as I move around, you know, and a lot of people say, well, arts is good for the soul, but it's also food for the table, right? And I think this is one of the other aspects from a local perspective, from an arts perspective, that we found very, very fundamental in this particular study.
That's great. What's the biggest takeaway from your standpoint that we should be thinking about as mayors in terms of how to use the arts for community healing, especially as you see so much distrust in local government and government in general, and so much misinformation in our media right now?
I'm going to be very simple. I was in the military for 32 years. I was an infantry guy, and they always told me to keep it simple, right? What I would tell the mayors today is to remember one number, 17 cents. Why is that important? Because this time in our Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, we took a cultural look at what was happening. We went into BIPOC communities with intentionality to understand what was happening in those communities as well as the majority. And the number 17 cents is interesting because what we discovered was that in an average across all the country, when a person goes to attend an event, they spend about $38.46. That was in the majority, the overall country. The difference between what is spent in those communities and what's spent in our BIPOC communities is 17 cents. So what that means is that the expenditure is the same when it comes to people's interest in arts and supporting the arts. But there's a big disparity to your question in terms of where the investment and how we are spending into that. So I would say one thing is to put more juice into that 17 cents and make those communities as just as vital and a part of what's happening in the community. I hope that's
perfect. That's great. Now I want to turn to two of our award-winning mayors, Mayor Thomas Roach from White Plains, New York, and Mayor Tashara Jones of St. Louis, Missouri. From your standpoint, what are you seeing in your cities in terms of how you are using arts to drive social change in your respective cities? Mayor Jones?
So everyone knows that during the pandemic, our arts community was devastated. They weren't able to do live music or live theater. And so in St. Louis, when we received our ARPA allocation, we set aside $10 million to go directly to the arts through our Regional Arts Commission. And I personally am a big supporter of the arts. We have, they say in St. Louis you can find live music 300 out of 365 days a year.
Wow.
And in St. Louis, you can find the mayor at those maybe 150 days out of the year. So I'm a just huge supporter of the arts. I grew up in it. My mother was a dancer. So it comes natural to me to support the arts.
That's great. Mayor Roach?
I mean, it's vital to our community. I think part of what we want to do in our downtowns is to show vitality.
Yeah.
Not only for the people that attend the events, but people just driving by see something's happening. Even if they don't participate, a seed is planted. This is a place where things happen. And so having the art downtown, we've had a huge arts festival with Arts Westchester, who is located in our city, and our partner, 5 days of displays, street art, music, everything you can name. We have a big jazz festival that has grown every single year. It brings a lot of energy to our downtown. And I also think yesterday I was struck when Senator Murphy was speaking, and he was talking about mental health and how we've lost the third place. You know, there's work, there's home, and we've lost the third place. And I think the arts can be the third place. Yeah. Whether it's performing arts or it's visual arts, it's a place for people to gather. It's a place for people to interact and feel good about themselves and their community.
Now, I'm going to put our two mayors on the spot here this morning, so bear with me. If there was one artist that describes the soul of your city, what artist would that be?
Well, I'll start.
Thank you.
Because this is just so near and dear to my heart. Well, I'm going to give you two, one from the past and one from the future.
Okay.
So Tina Turner was a St. Louisan. May she rest in peace. Sumner High School graduate, and Metro Boomin. He is the largest, well, he's a music producer that nobody's heard of it, but if you have ever heard music by Drake, Future, The Weeknd, Migos, that's most of it's been produced by Metro Boomin. He's a native St. Louisan, and he does events for single moms every year.
That's amazing.
In St. Louis, and we just did a huge soiree where 250 single moms got swag bags, Christmas gifts, a whole host of things right before Christmas.
That's amazing. Mayor Roach?
I'm going to go with Lin-Manuel Miranda. The wonderful work he did with Hamilton. I love the musical, and I, of course, have seen it. But also, Alexander Hamilton, when he was 21 years old, commanded artillery in the Battle of White Plains. And with 2 cannon that he had captured from the British in New York, the British were in White Plains in 1776 to end the war and end our country. And the men that got up on what was then Chatterton's Hill, which is now Battle Hill, he held them off. They held them off so Washington could pull back, saving the army and saving our country. And so there was a postage stamp issued as Hamilton at the cannon as part of who we are. It's a reminder of his history and the history of our nation. And so for me, that's what pops into my head. And I thank you for giving me the time to come up with that.
I love that. That's great. And we all love Hamilton, by the way.
See, the mayors stick together.
Yes, we do. One of our other award winners couldn't be here this morning, Governor Jared Polis from the great state of Colorado. Let's give our award winners from our cities and our states a round of applause for their amazing leadership. Now, as chair of tapes, I'm allowed a little mayoral privilege to select an amazing award winner from our city in Cleveland, Ohio, my dear friend, Honeybell Bay. She is the poet laureate of our county. She did an amazing poem for my inauguration nearly 2 years ago, and she has a special gift for us here this morning. She's going to recite a poem. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. I must take the liberty to stand. Is that okay? Yes. And this poem is called The Transformational Power of Art. It is where art drips into the margins of the marginalized. And Maya Angelou said, still I rise. Because in the vast differences of our cities, art is universal. It has transformational power. For some, neighbors, last seconds feels like final hours. I gave hundreds of distinguished young people a microphone and watched them empowered as poetry became their superpower. To understand art is to understand transformational power. As cliche as it might sound, art saves lives. And I can say this because I am alive. And like other stories, it could be told a different way at its heart. But yet I thrive and spend a lifetime saturated, serving through the arts. And in marginalized places, their souls gaps with no answers. And so poetically, I've always been forced to ad-lib. And like most of your cities, it becomes easier with the mayor like Justin Bibb, who invest in policies that paint hope in communities where people grapple to find new ways to cope. And the strongest of families, whether you're urban, suburban, or rural, find themselves up against the ropes. Art on its worst days, transformational. Art on its best days, inspirational. Art on its last days, motivational. Art on its lacking days, educational. It's to lift every voice and sing. It's the reason why Martin said, from every mountaintop, let freedom ring. It's the, oh say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? It's the gleaming in that child's eye. It's the singing cage bird's reason why. It is that student in class who's impacted by trauma-informed care. It's the singing single mother who knows she belongs, but she still asks where. It's the urban planning. It's the murals on cityscapes. It's the opening of recreational centers where youth can escape. It's the school voices and the drumline choices. It's the church choirs where the brokenhearted rejoices. Art is nonpartisan. Art is bipartisan. Art is all partisan because every one of us listening, you are your own unique type of artisan. Art is intergenerational, not always occupational, not always political, conversational. Art is non-denominational. Art is irreplaceable. To really understand art is to know that its community power is transformational. To really understand art is to know that its community's power is transformational.
I just got blessed.
Yeah.
Honey Bell Bay not only represents what I believe is the best of Cleveland, but the best of this great country. Thank you again, Honey Bell Bay. We appreciate it so much. As I said before we kicked off today's meeting, one of the biggest goals I have as chair of the Tapes Committee this year is to really elevate the role that sports can play in driving social impact in our respective cities. And this is personal for me because as a working class, a black kid from the southeast side of Cleveland, my first love was not to be the mayor, it was to be the next LeBron James. I quickly realized that my jump shot was not good enough and I needed to figure out another path. But basketball, for me, was that safe haven. From sun up to sundown, I was at the Boys and Girls Club or the local gym just because I thought it was the only thing I could do as a working class black kid in Cleveland. And as mayor, I've seen how sports can really drive change in our city. And so in my first year as mayor, I was able to host the NBA All-Star Game in my second month as mayor. And I had the privilege of welcoming Commissioner Adam Silver to Cleveland and James Cottigan, who leads the Social Justice Coalition for the NBA. And I had a firsthand glimpse at how the NBA is doing an amazing job, not just in the United States, but around the world in terms of leveraging the sport of basketball to drive change. So we have James here today, and I want to just have James to share his viewpoint on what he's doing at the NBA and how he's leading change all across the country. James?
I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, this was a setup. You had me go after a poet laureate. That's just not fair. Thank you again. Amazing.
Got it.
I'm the executive director of the National Basketball Social Justice Coalition, and it's my privilege to lead an organization that was developed by the NBA, the National Basketball Players Association, and the National Basketball Coaches Association, which are the player and coach unions for the league. That collaboration of those three institutions between labor and management grew out of 2020 and the reawakening on racial justice that was happening in this country and ricocheting around the world. And the work that we do really answers one question, which is what can the NBA family do to build on its history and tradition of working in community to advance racial and social justice? How do we do that better? How do we get sharper? How are we more incisive about it? And ultimately, we came up with one philosophy, that the NBA family has done incredible community engagement work, and that will always continue. That we've done great philanthropic work. We have an NBA foundation as well as team foundations that make grants across the country. That will continue. But the one thing that we hadn't done was step into the public policy space. And so our coalition was established as a 501c4 organization, a joint venture of those three entities, to bring NBA voices into the fights on criminal justice, on voting rights, on policing reform, and on community safety. So our job is to find the places and spaces where we can bring people together across lines of difference, including across partisan lines, behind the issues that unite us. So we think in our 28 markets where we have 30 teams, how do we push for better, safer communities? How do we make sure that people have access to the ballot? How do we work with elected officials to continue to push on policing reform and advocate for those bills that we think make sense for our communities? So we're really proud that over the past few years, we've been able to support 27 different bills and see 7 of them pass in the markets where we've worked. We've hosted more than a dozen events and activations around our issues, and in particular, the signature initiatives with Mayor Bibb, for example, in Cleveland, to commemorate those moments of our history, like the Cleveland Summit of 1957, where Black athletes came together to take a stand and say that it is not just about our sport, it's about who we are as people and our communities. We know that we can make a difference. We sit in that history and in that tradition, and our job is to honor that going forward.
James, from your standpoint, how can America's mayors do a better job of partnering with our sports teams to advance their respective policy agendas?
Well, I want to start by saying I think there are some really great collaborative relationships between mayors and our sports leaders in community. There have to be, just because of the amount of physical plant that we have. Those relationships are tight and bonded. I will say that I think that there is an opportunity to do more and step into the frame of asking a simple question, which is, how can we collaborate and leverage the platform of sports to help you with your agendas that most people support? It, of course, won't be everything, but I think there are a lot of issues in the social space that we can all get behind. And that's our article of faith. We start by saying, what do people care about? What do our fans care about? Core and casual fans, what are they thinking about? And how can we make sure that we are using our media platform to elevate those issues? We forge those partnerships with elected officials to make sure that we are doing our part in community to raise up what most people want to support. And so for us, it's always about asking the right question of a partnership that already exists between whether it's mayor, congressional, state executive. Those relationships are so powerful and so strong, but oftentimes we just haven't asked that basic question of what we in the sports realm can do better to bring the message of change to constituents in your markets.
You know, one of the biggest issues we're focused on here this year under the leadership of our president, Mayor Sheevy, is mental health. And we recognize that the NBA is doing some new work around mental health. Can you talk more about that initiative?
Sure. Well, I will speak to it and just credit my colleagues in professional player development at the NBA. They have developed a mind health initiative in collaboration with the Players Association, which really raises up the fact that all of us can think better and do better and be more mindful of what's happening with our mental health. And athletes, obviously, we've talked for a long time about winning mindsets, about competitive mindsets, but it's only recently that we've started to see and talk about, and athletes have been able to be honest about the need to support the downsides of what it takes to compete in that pressure cooker and what it means to them in the short, medium, and long term to take care of their mental health. And as we see all these challenges in our communities, especially for our young people, and also for us as adults, the ability to have role models who are saying, at this highest level of what we do, where we know the competitive mindset is integral to our success, how do we do better at taking care of that health, both for our time that we spend lacing them up on the court, but also afterwards when we come out into the community and we want to live the rest of our lives. That example and the resources that the Player Development Department is now providing to professional athletes at the highest levels, I think that sets a benchmark for what we want to try to do in communities and beyond.
That's great. So I'm going to open up the floor to all of our panelists for this last question. And Nolan, we'll start with you. What's the biggest thing giving you hope right now as you think about arts and cities?
One word, creativity. I often say this, and some may have heard this before, but when you think about, and I'm quoting from a study of sorts that I'd read, but one of the writers said, when you think about everything that's been created that we've ever known, it comes from two sources: the earth and someone's creativity. And when I think about creativity and I think about art and I think about culture, all of the things that we're talking about, it's going to be the creative genius of this country and its people that's going to allow us to get through that. And I think that the arts and cultural aspect of our nation is so poised to do that. I got in this business because I was trying to find a solution for military service members to deal with trauma. And art, I ended up at the doorsteps because it's serving them very well. I think you know this, 70% of all of the 911 calls that come into our centers are centered around this, has a mental health component to it, right? And I think that these are the connections that I see being made through the arts, and I think the arts has a platform that it can use to be beneficial there. So it's the creativity, it's the genius. It's still in the educational arena of art. We've got creative artists being born every day in this country, and I think that's what's going to help us. But then finally, to make an economic, because mayors are interested in economics as well. The challenge in the future is going to be for competitiveness is how creative is my company, how creative is my corporation, right? And that's going to touch the bottom line of all of our communities in terms of economy. So I'm very hopeful because of my experience with the creativity. A lot of folks say I'm not an artist, but we all are creatives. We create every day. And I think that's the genius of what's going to help us get through it.
We create every day. I love that. Mayor Roach.
I would say it's art's ability to bring people together, the collegiality of working with Arts Westchester, with working with our Business Improvement District to bring things to our city. And just seeing people like at Jazz Fest and an outdoor show spontaneously get up and dance with people they've never met before. And that starts a conversation. But I think most of all, the bravery of artists, because as James was mentioning, people are down too. And it's not just all about joy. It's not all about fun. But when people are down, they can feel alone and isolated in that. And artists have the bravery to take what's in their heart and put it on canvas, put the words out there, put the music out there, and remind people that other people are feeling that way too. And they do that, and it comes from their heart, and they push it out to the world and let everybody say whatever they want about it. That's bravery to me. And I think that's something that we all benefit from.
Love that. Mayor Jones?
I would say the creativity of our young people. Our young people are using tools that weren't available when I was a teenager in my early 20s to create things just on the spot. And they're uploading it to all these social media platforms and sharing it with the world in 30 seconds, right? And so just being able to see how their minds work and how they're able to put things together and create things to share with everyone, I think is giving me a lot of hope for what arts is going to be in the future.
Honey?
Yes, I think the biggest piece for me becomes the lessening of the stigma that surrounds trauma. And so people are becoming unafraid to use art as an outlet to address suicidal tendencies, to address depression. When you're able to say it's not just a poem, but you can look at words like Paul Laurence Dunbar's The Mask or Langston Hughes' Mother to Son, and all these pieces, and you can actually connect the dots of the pieces you are facing so that 20 years down the line, you're not looking at the ACEs score and saying to yourself, look, I never had an outlet to address all of these things in childhood, and the trauma is not associated with it. I'm dancing my depression away, or I'm singing away my sorrow, and it's normalized. There's not a stigma associated with it. So there's that correlation between mental health and the arts, I think, is our greatest superpower when we really look at the power behind arts.
Love that. James?
I would say inspiration. I don't know anybody who's ever won anything or moved on anything with a negative vision. It's aspiration and inspiration that drive us all, and certainly from the sports perspective. Like you, Mayor Bibb, I was a child of the 80s, so I grew up with the VHS tapes of basketball players, and they inspired me, and I became a public policy lawyer because I was inspired by civil rights lawyers, right? So that vision was important to me, and now we see so many kids around the world today able to access basketball, sports, arts, whatever it may be, at the touch of a button, and that inspiration and what it means for how they grow, how they develop, what they think their possibilities are, pushing their horizons and boundaries, how they can contribute to their communities, that is second to none. And without the arts, I don't think any of this would be possible.
That's great. Well, if there's anything we've learned here this morning, it's that arts has the ability to heal the wounds that we see in our country, and it'll be the one thing that allows us to really make sure that the promise of this country is realized in the future. So let's give our panelists and honorees a round of applause today if we can. This concludes our session, and I'll hand the mic to our Vice President. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it.
Please welcome the Mayor of Columbus, Ohio, and Vice President of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Andrew Ginther.
Good morning, mayors. Our next panel is on the topic of bipartisan opportunities in the 118th Congress. It's no secret that political polarization is increasing in our communities and in our Congress. Studies have shown that Democrats and Republicans in Congress are further apart ideologically today than in any time in the last 50 years. At a time of increasing tension, it is more crucial than ever before to find avenues for compromise and collaboration across the aisle. Joining me is the United States Representative from New Jersey's 5th Congressional District, a Democrat himself. He is the co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress, which was founded in 2017 to find common ground between Democrats and Republicans and advocate for ideas that appeal to a wide range of Americans. Please welcome Representative Josh Gottheimer. We're also pleased to introduce the United States Representative who serves New York's 19th Congressional District. He is a former 5-time mayor of Tivolo, New York. He was the youngest mayor elected in America when he was elected, before going on to a career as a Dutchess County executive and a New York state legislator. He gets us. Republican. He's a member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, along Representative Gottheimer. Please welcome Congressman Mark Molinaro.
I didn't know he was the youngest.
I was. I'm still
Not
younger.
anymore.
Not
Still
anymore.
younger than Josh.
Congress will do that to you, right?
Well, we age quickly.
Well, it's great to have you both. A couple of key things. We like to think of ourselves at the U.S. Conference of Mayors as a bipartisan, pragmatic organization. It's oftentimes said there are three types of folks in America: Republicans, Democrats, and mayors, right? There's not a Republican or Democratic way to pick up the trash, plow the streets, create jobs, and work with police to protect our neighborhoods. So we're really leaning in here and think that this is a great opportunity to partner with the Problem Solvers Caucus to push for bipartisanship. First of all, we want to thank you publicly for your support of keeping the government open. Cities don't shut down, and neither should our government. And so, first of all, we want to publicly thank you for your leadership in helping to get that done. But talk to us a little bit about the Problem Solvers Caucus, how it came to be, and why you think bipartisanship is more important than ever before based on the environment that we're in.
I'm going to go first?
Please.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having us.
Yeah.
We're really happy to be here. And thanks for what you do, because it's true, and Mark was a former mayor, as you pointed out, gets this well, and you guys helped us a ton on the infrastructure bill and so much, so thank you. For so many of us who are in Congress, like you, we're sick and tired of people just screaming and yelling and tweeting nasty things, and we came here for one purpose, right? Is to actually get stuff done. And the only way you're going to get stuff done, especially in a divided government, is to talk to each other, to build relationships, to build trust, like you all do when you come down here and talk to each other and figure out best practices and best ideas. And that's what the Problem Solvers Caucus is all about. There's 32 Democrats now, 32 Republicans. We get together every week when we're here with one purpose, which is to actually get to yes, to figure out how we can agree, to figure we can get to 80% solution, not insist on 100%. I know this sounds nuts, right? We actually talk to each other. We don't yell at each other. We're not allowed to campaign against one another, right? So we don't work against each other, right? We actually try to be on the same team, because it's very hard to work with somebody if you think they're trying to kill you also. Yeah. And so that's the whole idea. And some of the biggest stuff that has come out of Congress in the last few years is because we sit down and talk to one another and work it out with our friends in the Senate too.
Listen, I appreciate being here, and I certainly know the work that America's mayors do, and I appreciate it. So the saying we used to have in the village of Tivoli, he struggled with the Italian name. I noticed the guy from Ohio can't figure it out. What we used to say in Tivoli is when the roof leaks, it leaks on Republicans and Democrats. And the job of local government is just to fix the roof. Well, you go to Congress and suddenly there's a number of people who just talk about why the roof's leaking and who made the roof leak and kick the can down the road about fixing the roof. Not the problem solvers. I mean, the point of our existence is, in a very divided government, in a very divided nation, is to try to bridge that divide, have those conversations, and move the needle toward consensus. Critically important. And I just would say, though, as a former mayor, I understand. I do. The decisions you make have real impacts on real people instantly. And when you live through that for 12 years, when you are the point of contact for your constituents on just about everything from potholes to criminal justice and all things in between, you recognize that the decisions you make impact people. When you are so far removed in Congress, too often you think that your decisions don't. And the minute you lose that connection, you lose the humanity of our decisions, and it makes it easy to be partisan. Our job is to find consensus. And I even argue it's not about bipartisanship. It's simply about finding the right answer to solve the right problem at the right time.
Tivoli.
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 Not, yes, Tivoli. Tivoli.
I clearly need one more cup of coffee.
No one else has ever heard of it either. Don't worry, it's fine.
1,300 people. We were very close, but not all related.
But you couldn't go anywhere without running into somebody that needed something or thought that the city could be doing better. So talk to us. Obviously, as mayors, we love having mayors in the Congress and in the U.S. Senate and working in government because they get us and understand us. Help us understand and give some advice, since you've sat in both seats, how mayors can work more closely to support the Problem Solvers Caucus, whether or not you're from Ohio or not. We want to support the work of the caucus and work more closely together. Talk about how your experience as both a mayor and a member of Congress can be leveraged in that way.
So I offer two things, and I've given this advice before. I've served in the state legislature, by the way, as a county mayor, representing 300,000 people, $1 billion budget. And so what I tell people is this. Number one, humanize your argument. Listen, you can sign as many form letters as you want. I'm sure Josh reads every one of them. I'm going to tell you.
Always.
When you personalize the message, I see my friend from the city of Poughkeepsie. If you can tell me how my decision affects the north side of Poughkeepsie, then I want to know it, and I want to hear how they're going to be impacted by our choices. Second, you have to push back on your party interests. And I tell people this all the time. I mean it. As a Republican county executive, I was told, oh, don't work with that Democrat, or when that Democrat comes to town, don't invite them, pat them on the back. And you, as Democrats and Republicans, have to do the same thing. You've got to say that when I have an elected official who's doing the right thing for me, I'm going to pat him on the back. And when he or she, irrespective of party, isn't, I'm going to tell him so. You know, I work very well with Chuck Schumer. When Chuck Schumer comes to town, everybody pats him on the back. I used to whisper in his ear, Chuck, the riverfront needs this. It's important that you tell people honestly what the challenges are that you face and humanize that message in a way that keeps them on their toes. If they feel comfortable and confident that they don't have to work for your support, they won't. And so we're in the same boat. We've got to work for each other. I mean, Josh is very difficult to work with. And so I have to work hard for his support. But bipartisanship, nonpartisanship, consensus is hard. You should be making it hard for the folks in your party and welcoming those across the aisle who stand with you when they do.
Can I add one thing to that?
Please.
Because I think that's spot on. I think the other thing, and we've got a bunch of mayors from Jersey here and who are phenomenal. What helps us a lot, and when we were working on doing the infrastructure deal, our work on veterans, our work on environmental issues, I have found some of the best ideas that we've worked into legislation have come from mayors actually calling and saying, hey, you know, we're doing this here and it's really working. Why don't you should try this. You should build it into your legislation. Or this bill you're about to propose, it sounds great, but you don't understand the unintended consequence it's going to have on my city. And it's really, really important. I think Mark gets this especially, right? When we actually hear from the mayors, because frankly, our job is to work for you. You're on the ground every single hour, every day. So if you have a good idea or you see something that doesn't make sense, when you tell us, it speaks volumes, because you're also getting feedback all day long from people. So the more you actually call and have that relationship, and there's Republican mayors here today from Jersey and Democratic mayors. I talk to all of them. Why? Because again, it's not partisan. Someone's like, well, there's nothing partisan about picking up the trash, as you pointed out. Nothing partisan about that. You're on the ground with the best ideas, and it helps us solve problems. A lot of what's in the infrastructure bill that we passed, right? The most important infrastructure bill in 100 years came from, I'm telling you, because I helped write it. It came from mayors in my district, and I'm very proud about that.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to those new Jersey mayors. Mayor
You
Tim.
don't have to.
You can't
want to.
Well, we know this wouldn't
You
have
only got one mayor who shut up for you. I got a lot of mayors from Jersey who shut up for me.
So
I don't know what that says about you, Monaro.
I want to thank Mayor McDonough, obviously Brian Waller, Chris Bullwich, just some great mayors who have served this conference very well and helped to put and make this happen today. So how did we get here? With the polarization, the partisanship, probably...
You got a couch? What do you want to say?
Probably even more important for this conversation is where do we go from here? And what role do mayors play as what looks like a rematch? 50%, regardless of what happens this year, 50% of the country is not going to accept the results. How do we as mayors help to lead us through this critically important time focused on bipartisanship integrity, and cooperation and collaboration.
So thanks for putting that one on me. Listen, first of all, it's not nearly, and you all know this because you're elected officials, it's not nearly as bad here as, CNN and Fox will have you make it, believe, right? The reality is, you've got 64 of us who sit down together every week, but there's more people like that who actually want to get things done. And we pass things all the time that are bipartisan. This year, we were very involved in getting the debt ceiling deal done and keeping the government open. We're working right now on the package that has Ukraine funding with border security and immigration reform in it, support for Israel and Taiwan, right? And we've been very involved in that, behind the scenes working. So it still really functions. The noise is loud and it gets louder because that's what sells on TV and on social media. We get that. So one, it's not as bad, but two, you have to make sure just what you do, you've got to get stuff done, you got to pass your budgets, you got to things, so do we, which means that the two of us and those of us involved in the problem solvers have to keep, no matter what the noise is, no matter what the screaming, the yelling, no matter what's going on nationally, we got to get our jobs done. And so I'm not worried about us being able to do what we need to do, and we've got to focus on that and kind of ignore all the noise.
Yeah, I would offer I'm a new member. Josh has been here for a little bit longer. One of the big disappointments is
I was taller than you and I.
He was taller. I'm going to leave here before I get to whatever height he is.
I'm about to disappear, man.
That's not good. The big disappointment that I have is that while 80%, I think, 75% of the members actually work together quite well on a number of issues. I serve on transportation infrastructure, the agriculture committee. We are nonpartisan. We have to deal with FAA reauthorization because we want our planes to fly safely and we want passengers to be safe. We have to deal, like you do, with the growing mental health and substance use disorder crisis in this country, and we do it in a bipartisan way. Not much of that gets television time, and with all due respect, not often do you point to those things. I understand why. The model doesn't support the work that we do. The model is you go on social media, you throw a few hand grenades, you raise a few bucks. It's a business model that perpetuates itself.
Exactly.
Where and how do we break through it? I think time will allow. I think we're getting to the point where the country recognizes this just isn't working, this constant 50-50 battle, although we're going to have to get through probably that over the course of the next 8 months. But time will provide that opportunity. And I would just say keep doing the work you're doing. And I don't want to be corny about it. Listen, most people trust their local government. And if you look, I think it was Pew Institute did a poll some years ago. It basically said, the closer you are, the more trust there is. Don't break that trust. I mean it. You are our best ambassadors, meaning you are government's best ambassadors. You're the ones who get the work done. You're the ones who fill the potholes. And yeah, when moms or dads are crying because their kid's stuck in a crappy criminal justice system, or they can't find their way to a Social Security check, or they're looking for their passport, they may call us, but they're likely to start with you.
They always start with you.
Yes.
They call us.
You need to be their conduit, their messenger, and by extension, and I hate to say this to you, you then provide us the opportunity, you give us a good face too. They see government functioning. And then I'll end by just going back to where I started and saying, please don't miss the opportunities, despite the whisper in your ear from your party, despite the whisper in your ear from your council members or whomever it is, to say don't partner with them. There will be moments where reaching across the aisle makes sense. Don't miss them. And common ground is elusive, but we can find it.
That's really what Marsh said is incredibly important to add to that. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call us and to say, the people who say to you, it's just a mess there, to actually, I work with them all the time, and there's plenty of stuff that we're getting done working together. And I think people need, you're asking what do we need to repair things? People need to have faith in it. We live in the greatest country in the world. Yeah. People need to know that the system works, and it does work, right? And that, you think about what we did together in the Problem Solvers Caucus and beyond in the last 2 years, right? Not just infrastructure, but big support for veterans, support for cops, right? And first responders, building chips in the United States instead of, our number one enemy and adversary in the government of China, right? There's all this stuff we did working together. And we got to tell more of the good news, because if we're negative, the people we represent are going to be negative. We got to remind them that we got to put the country first. And I think if we do that, well, it'll start to lift everyone back up that way.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thanks. Mayor, Congressman, I'm going to give you the last word. Give these mayors, some inspiration as we head
thanks
in.
a lot.
head into these
I mean,
trying times. And
I could have told you that's not what you should ask me to do.
That's not my sweet spot.
Where's the Problem Solvers Caucus in America's Mayors in January of 2025?
Well, first, you are America's Problem Solvers Caucus. Please understand that.
Excellent.
You are America's problem solvers. And I just would say to you that I do believe this nonpartisan, consensus-oriented effort, call it problem solvers because that's what we associate as, call it whatever you want. There's a place in America for that. It's where most people live. It's where the work gets done. It's where the problems get solved. It's where the challenges get overcome. Do not shrink from your responsibility to be America's problem solvers. And I will offer to you that when you said mayor, executive, when I die, the only title I want on whatever little plaque my kids leave for me is mayor. Once a mayor, always a mayor. We understand the challenges.
I mean, the
we
pandering
get
is
the job
pathetic.
done. It'll be a small plaque.
I mean, it's just the pandering is unbelievable.
Absolutely. Listen, I deal with county executives and town supervisors all the time. I tell them I love all my children equally. I just happen to love mayors more.
Please thank these incredible members of Congress.
Thank you guys for what you do. Thank you so much.
Their engagement, their service.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you all. Thank you. Appreciate you. What a great panel. Thank you all for joining us this morning and being part of that. And thanks to the two members of Congress for making time for us in what has been a very busy and eventful week. Now, on to our DollarWise Innovation Grant Awards. DollarWise is the economic mobility campaign of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, supported by the founding sponsor, Bank of America. DollarWise works with cities across the country to remove barriers to economic mobility, improve work skills, and create intergenerational wealth for underserved residents. The campaign supports such programs as driver's license restoration, reentry assistance, and support to child care providers. This year, DollarWise will award 7 cities with $10,000 each to foster innovation programs that can be replicated in communities across the country. Pleased to announce this year's winners and their projects. Please hold your applause until the end. Anaheim Mayor Ashley Aitken, who will use the grant to support the Cultural District of Little Arabia with entrepreneurial assistance, which offers business educational courses in Arabic and English. Colorado Springs Mayor Yemi Mubalade, who will focus on resource support for justice-impacted homeless residents to mitigate future legal challenges and meet their immediate and most pressing needs. Findlay Mayor Christina Mern, who will use the grant to help individuals with convictions petition for a certificate of qualification for employment. Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed will utilize Montgomery's M-Transit system to provide affordable rides to support participants in accessing educational opportunities, job interviews, and work. Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney will use the grant to train Richmond residents as birth doulas to address unemployment, child care barriers, and poor maternal outcomes. Rochester, New York Mayor Malik Evans will use the grant to introduce an estate planning and home weatherization program for Black and Brown homeowners. Santa Fe Mayor Alan Weber plans to implement a program that offers incentives, coaching, and business support for home-based child care providers. Please join me in congratulating each of our winning mayors. We look forward to hearing about their progress at our annual meeting this summer in June in Kansas City. Thank you for your important work. Congratulations again to our winners, and thanks to Bank of America for your incredible support. And now I'd like to invite the Senior Vice President of State and Local Government Relations at Bank of America to say a few words. Please welcome Brian Putler.
Mayor Ginther, thank you very much for having me again, and congratulations to this year's winning mayors. Bank of America is so proud to be the founding sponsor of DollarWise campaign and the innovation grants that we support. With more than 100 innovation grants made now by DollarWise, mayors are helping communities improve their economic health and success. Our community's biggest problems cannot be solved by government alone or private industry alone. Rather, government and business are most effective at problem solving when we work together, and we are proud to be your partner. Thank you, mayors, for the important work you are doing in your communities to help them thrive, and again, congratulations to this year's winning mayors.
Okay, little louder. Little louder. Okay, that's much better. Okay, the United States Conference of Mayors worked tirelessly to encourage the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law in the 118th Congress. Okay, through the leadership of President Biden, it finally became a reality. Now with our federal agency partners, we face the monumental task of implementing the $1.2 trillion law within 5 short years. So the nation's mayors stand ready to rise to the occasion. To navigate the multitude of infrastructure programs in law, Bloomberg Philanthropies has partnered with the United States Conference of Mayors and other organizations to create the local infrastructure hub. Raise your hands, who has used the hub? Awesome, okay. This is such a great tool. The hub provides assistance to cities during the application process and has been an invaluable resource as we access the historic infrastructure funding. But don't take my word for it. Here are what mayors are saying about the local infrastructure hub.
Infrastructure reaches all aspects of a city, and so we've got to rebuild our infrastructure. We've got to rebuild America,
making sure that we're preparing our city for the future.
We have more opportunities for federal support at the city level right now than we've ever had in the history of this country.
We're all limited with the staff that we have.
That's what the local infrastructure hub does. It helps cities of every size.
And we know where that money needs to be spent to ensure a high quality of life for our constituents.
The bipartisan infrastructure law has been transformational in Cincinnati. We've received about $500 million in grants to reconnect disinvested communities that were frankly destroyed by national infrastructure highway projects in the 50s and 60s.
We received the Thriving Communities grants to create more safe bike and pedestrian pathways and roads for people to drive through.
This will be an economic development driver, a transportation mobility solution.
We invested in water and sewer, electricity grid.
And to make sure that we can bring more high-speed internet to communities that have not had that opportunity.
It also will provide more jobs for everyone.
I just want to thank the local infrastructure hub because without us working together, I don't think that we would have the impact that I know we're going to have.
Washington, D.C. is willing to partner with us to get it done.
We thank the local infrastructure hub for everything that they are doing to help us navigate this incredible opportunity.
All right, now please welcome to the stage the Senior Director of Government Innovation. We're not supposed to give them titles at Bloomberg, so I apologize. But please welcome to the stage from Bloomberg Philanthropies, Jamie Lavin. She's amazing. I love this woman. She's a change maker. Come on out, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sheevy, for that kind introduction and for your really outstanding leadership of the conference. It's such an honor to be joining this incredible group of mayors. On behalf of Mike Bloomberg and James Anderson and the entire team at Bloomberg Philanthropies, I'm proud to join you this morning for an update on how the local infrastructure hub has been working with you, America's mayors, to seize the opportunities that Washington is providing to make your communities safer, stronger, and more resilient. Since 2022, we've been working with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Thank you, Tom, Dave Gatton, and everyone on their outstanding team. Emerson Collective, Results for America, National League of Cities, Delivery Associates, and countless other partners to provide support for cities of all sizes nationwide to meet this once-in-a-generation opportunity. Together, we're navigating the historic funding available through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. Our chief aim is to help you develop competitive, ambitious, and innovative grant applications and bring investment home to residents to address essential infrastructure needs. This will translate into safer roads, bridges, and railroads, more reliable drinking water and waste treatment, more resilient energy grids, wider access to broadband, and greater ability to mitigate flooding, benefits that your communities want and deserve. To date, we've worked with over 1,200 cities nationwide. This includes more than 3,200 local officials and over 270 mayors from every U.S. state. Already, local governments participating in our programs have won more than $1 billion in federal funding. I think that's worth a round of applause. Our programming supports mayors and cities in two key ways. First, we've hosted strategic sessions with federal officials, policy experts, mayors, and their key staff about grants for major types of infrastructure. In each of these sessions, we've heard from mayors about how they're undertaking the essential steps, engaging with community, following the data, and partnering with stakeholders and residents to develop ambitious projects that will transform communities for generations to come. The good news is all of these ideas can be replicated, something we believe strongly in at Bloomberg Philanthropies. For instance, we've heard from Mayor Giles of Mesa, Arizona, about how his city has used microtrenching, that's a fancy word for a lower-cost way to lay fiber, to bring more affordable internet connectivity to their residents, expanding broadband access. We worked with the city then to develop an in-depth case study, which is available on our website, so you can all follow Mesa's blueprint. And then we've heard from Mayor Castor of Tampa, Florida. She shared how her city's tackling pedestrian safety with an ambitious Vision Zero plan. The new $20 million grant that they received through the Safe Streets and Roads for All program will allow Tampa to start implementing its plan, its vision. And Mayor Bibb has shared how he's working side by side with Cleveland residents, including through visits to his grandma's church, to identify the needs that are most important to the community, and those will shape their infrastructure priorities. To help the mayors and their teams, we've collected and published successful applications from cities around the country. These can serve as a roadmap and inspiration for your projects. It's helpful to know what good looks like. We look forward to welcoming more of the mayors in this room to elevate your successes and talk about what's not working. In going after infrastructure funds, the Local Infrastructure Hub has created a framework through which mayors across the country are learning and winning together. The second key aspect of our program is designed to ensure that small and mid-sized cities get the resources that they need, but often don't have, to draw down infrastructure dollars for their communities. In collaboration with the National League of Cities, we created grant writing boot camps to help communities with populations under 150,000 residents to understand line by line how to create a competitive grant application. These boot camps deliver months-long training from technical and policy experts, ensuring that municipal officials are well prepared in the art and science of applying for these particular forms of federal aid. Of the nearly 700 localities getting support through the boot camps, 77% have fewer than 50,000 residents, and 42% have fewer than 10,000 residents. We supported Athens, Ohio, led by Mayor Patterson, in developing a regional strategy on their EV charging grant application, which just last week was awarded millions. This grant's going to finance a corridor of charging stations across 19 communities stretching from Athens to Dayton. Under Mayor Buffalo's leadership, Columbia, Missouri has deeply engaged, I think it's Missouri, has deeply engaged in our boot camp. And we're glad to hear that just last week, the city won millions to invest in charging and fueling infrastructure. This will enable Columbia to expand EV access to new stations, upgrade bus stops, and improve a vital transit center. Recognizing that Allentown, Pennsylvania doesn't have infrastructure project plans sitting on the shelf waiting for funding, Mayor Turk and his team jumped into our boot camps, including the Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant sessions, to access funds to develop a Vision Zero plan. Allentown is now using its $312,000 award to identify ways to make its streets safer for pedestrians and cyclists. We supported White Plains, New York, led by Mayor Roach, we just heard from, in 5 different boot camps, including the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, where the city was awarded a $400,000 planning grant. We're excited to continue supporting those of you who've gotten planning grants as you move towards implementation. Registration's open for our latest round of boot camps, kicking off next month. They're focused on Safe Streets and Roads for All, charging and fueling infrastructure, the PROTECT program, clean water, climate pollution reduction grants, and tax credits available through the Inflation Reduction Act, which we've been talking about a lot in this conference. I encourage you to scan that QR code at your seats, stop by our booth, or go to our website to register today. Thanks to the Biden-Harris administration and bipartisan support, cities have an unprecedented opportunity to make vital investments in their infrastructure and improve their roads, bridges, water, and public transit, and so much more to make your community stronger and improve your residents' lives. I want to also thank the federal agencies that have been coming into our local infrastructure hub programming and spending time with the mayors, explaining how these grant programs work and what they're looking for in reviewing applications. Among these leaders, of course, is a former mayor, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who I'm excited to hear from shortly. This is exciting, gratifying work, and without help from all of these corners, philanthropic partners, technical and policy experts, federal infrastructure leaders, local officials, and mayors, countless worthy projects could go unfunded. This is the time. The local infrastructure hub brings this collective together to ensure cities get the resources they need to confront our pressing infrastructure challenges. We thank you all for stepping up, and we're excited to keep working together to improve residents' lives and rebuild America. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you to Bloomberg Philanthropies. You guys have been amazing to us mayors, so thank you. All right, it is my honor to introduce a very special person who is no doubt familiar to all of you, I'm sure, the 19th United States Secretary of Transportation. The Secretary leads the U.S. Department of Transportation, where he has elevated so many important issues, especially safety, jobs, equity, climate, and innovation. He was instrumental in supporting the passage of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, a landmark legislative achievement. A law that is now moving billions of dollars into historic improvements that help us modernize and maintain America's transportation infrastructure. But we all remember and appreciate that before he stepped into this position, he was a mayor himself. He was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. And I was talking to a mayor backstage, and he said, "Oh, Hillary, I just wanted to introduce myself. I come from a little, tiny, tiny town. I'm a nothing mayor." I said, "Are you kidding me? It doesn't matter what size of city you come from. You are massive when it comes to, working in our cities and locally and working with each other." And I said, matter of fact, I said, someone I respect greatly who has done tremendous things is obviously Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So I am super excited. During his time as mayor, he was very involved in the conference's agenda, helping lead on automation and advancing manufacturing and among other issues. In our eyes, once a mayor, always a mayor, right? So please welcome Secretary Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
good to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for the warm welcome. Thanks to all of you for welcoming me back. It does feel good to be among America's mayors, especially at a time like this. I especially appreciate, for those of you who are from around here or the Southwest, I appreciate you braving the elements to be here. If you're from the Midwest, I appreciate you suppressing your Midwestern instincts to tell everybody in Washington, D.C. how this isn't real snow. It's all relative, it turns out. But I really do feel at home more than anywhere else when I am among America's mayors. Occasionally on the street, somebody will say, "Hey, Mayor Pete," and then they'll stop and correct themselves like they think maybe they said something wrong. I always say that I wear that as a compliment. I was actually thinking back to when I first got elected, not even elected, after I got the nomination of my party for mayor in my city. A couple days later, I got an email from a 10-year-old boy saying, "Congratulations. And now that you're mayor, I need to let you know that there's this intersection close to where I live. And sometimes I wait there to get a ride. It's very dangerous. The cars speed by there, and it needs a stop sign." And I wrote him back, unsure how he got my email address, and said, "Thanks so much for getting in touch. I'm not actually the mayor yet. I still have to win the general election, but I look forward to doing everything I can to make our streets safer." And sure enough, I won the election. The very next day, I get an email from this 10, I think he's 11 now. "Congratulations on getting elected. Now, I'd like to get back to the matter of the stop sign." And once I took office and understood how our Department of Public Works worked, I asked our city engineer, do we have a process for this? And of course there is, and they did some math, and it turned out that it was justified. And next thing I knew, one of the first days in office, we found the kid, and the two of us together installed a stop sign at the corner of Don Moyer Avenue in South Bend, Indiana. And those are the kinds of things that are... as mayors what it's like to have that incredibly immediate impact. The importance of your work readily intelligible to a 10-year-old child, even as you deal with some of the most confounding issues in public policy and American politics and public administration today. And I always try to remember the spirit of those early days, navigating what our city government could do. As I work now in Washington with my administration colleagues under President Biden's leadership to try to make your job a little bit easier, especially at a time like this. The more I see division at the national and global levels, the more convinced I am that salvation comes from the local. And I believe in many ways the most meaningful measure of our success as an administration will be how communities are doing at a local level. Or to put it another way, whether we are making your jobs easier as American mayors. And I hope that you'll agree that we are. You face so many challenges that have become more fierce and more ferocious than when I was sitting at this table with the mayor's lanyard in this room 6 or 7 years ago. But it also would have been nice back then if the President of the United States had launched a $1.2 trillion infrastructure investment coming to my city and every other in the United States. We're here in the most literally concrete terms to support you in your work to make sure you succeed and to try to shape the culture of this place, Washington, D.C., to better reflect what is great about America's communities. Back when I was running for president, which is an effort I first made public from this very stage 5 years ago this week, I often said that we would be well served if Washington worked a little more like America's best-run cities rather than the other way around. And I believe that even more strongly now. So what I wanted to do with our time together is share a few examples of how we have followed the lead of America's mayors and America's great communities, especially when it comes to transportation, and what that could mean for what you're trying to do. I'll start with bipartisanship. One of the things I love and miss about the city level, which is especially important to highlight during the chaos of an election year like this, is that partisan considerations and loyalties don't dominate everything else that's going on. When I was mayor, I was just as likely to forge meaningful cooperative relationships with Republicans as with Democrats without pretending to be any more politically conservative than I was. And I was just as likely to be challenged by Democrats as by Republicans. Through this body, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, I came to know and work with and trust fellow mayors without considering, or in some cases without even knowing, their party affiliations. In fact, I'm conscious I'm addressing one of the only rooms left in America where hundreds of senior elected officials from both parties from around the country gather with shared priorities and shared purpose and actually like each other. That's a powerful thing. I'd be lying if I said we've gotten anywhere close to that culture on a routine basis here in Washington. But I have been struck at how much of the work we're doing is not just bipartisan, but often nonpartisan in its character. Take the very fact of the bipartisan infrastructure law, which we passed with your help and support, with a number of Republicans who were willing to cross party lines and work with Democrats and President Biden to get it done. Even though the idea of a bipartisan anything law was greeted with mockery when President Biden first took office. The obituary of that legislation that we now can't imagine not having, that obituary was written dozens of times by people saying that the president was on a fool's errand trying to get bipartisan cooperation, only for it to happen in ways that is now delivering results in every part of the country, red, blue, and purple. Sometimes it means eliminating dangerous railroad crossings in rural counties that probably haven't voted with my party in decades. We were in Millen, Georgia recently, where trains that can be more than 2 miles long pass every day. They cut off an entire half a town from the other half. I was out there in December to celebrate a grant to fix that crossing, making it easier and safer to get around town. We're doing that kind of work. At the same time, we're funding transit improvements in East and West Coast cities like New York, where last fall I signed the final funding agreement to extend the 2nd Avenue subway up to 125th Street in East Harlem that they've been waiting for literally 50 years to get done. Every state, every region of this country, red, blue, and purple, has seen historic federal investments announced in roads and bridges, ports and airports, trains and transit, often the largest community investments that they've seen in a lifetime. I also need to mention, by the way, that we got a reprieve today in the form of a continuing resolution, but we are really going to need some sense of bipartisan problem solving to prevail in order to get the budget that we need to keep this work up. And here too, I wish the spirit of America's mayors would prevail. You don't have the option, if you have a disagreement with your council, of the government shutting. You deliver water, and you need water to live, so you can't shut down. And the federal government ought to have the same mentality as well. A second thing that I appreciate and sometimes miss about local government is the relentless and unmistakable focus on reality, on facts, on data that cannot be ignored. Local leadership is just more rooted in reality, largely because you're held accountable for it everywhere from local media to the grocery store. Don't get me wrong, I know rumor and misinformation can happen at every level, but in my experience, the truth is never that far away. When you're mayor, if there's a hole in the road and you don't manage to fill it in and somebody calls you on it, you can't say that's fake news because people know that that hole in the road is there. We've got to similarly ground our work at the national level, and that's what we seek to do at USDOT, looking for the evidence that'll tell us whether we're leaving each form of transportation better than we found it. We follow the facts, and we're following the facts to see where the results are happening. On supply chains, for example, Pacific shipping rates have fallen by more than half from their extreme peak during the pandemic. And following the events in the Red Sea, we were in close touch with carriers and DoD to monitor supply chain disruptions. And thanks to the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, American companies have more leverage against international shipping cartels, something that adds up to lower shipping costs, which in turn we know has contributed to lower inflation for the American people. We also know that because of strong investment in transportation and infrastructure and the construction and manufacturing that goes with it, we have an extraordinary, in fact, by many measures, unprecedented period of economic growth taking place right now. We're also holding ourselves accountable to make sure that that continues to reach every American. In air travel, just a few years after observers were asking if we were seeing the death of commercial aviation as we knew it during the pandemic, we've now seen some of the busiest travel seasons on record. And we ended 2023 with the lowest cancellation rate in the past 10 years, which translates to millions more people getting to where they need to be. We did that with a lot of work within FAA and a lot of pressure on airlines, which responded to that pressure by improving their operations. When it comes to roadway safety, we're very closely following the inescapable and troubling numbers that we see around the country. We are living through a crisis of roadway safety, something that I have been partnering with America's mayors to confront. In fact, we just had a great conversation with some of our Safe Streets for All grantees who around the country are taking steps, deploying federal dollars from the US DOT, but also your own political capital in order to help guide the people who trust you with their lives as your constituents towards safer roadways. I know that is not always an easy conversation to have, but we are here to support with everything from data and technical information to over $1.7 billion that has now reached over 1,000 communities. The reason this matters is because of the life-saving potential of addressing this crisis. We're finally seeing the numbers just start to come down, finally seeing early indications that we are reversing the rise in roadway deaths. But at 40,000 a year, a level commensurate with gun violence, the implication is that if we have a 1% reduction, we're saving 400 lives right there, the equivalent of 2 or 3 fully loaded 737 aircraft. This is the power of the decisions that are being made at the local level and the funding that is reaching you from the federal level. Another thing that I think every mayor understands is the importance of connection, symbolically and literally. The importance of unifying and connecting, whether in the physical, social, or even political sense. Mayors live and breathe that work. And often your specific visions for development, maximizing the use of a riverfront or enhancing a parks trail or reimagining a streetscape, embody a key insight that we at the federal level would do well to think about, which is that part of how you keep a community connected in the social sense is helping to connect it in the literal physical sense. Or to put it another way, mayors understand that physical mobility is inescapably connected to social mobility. We're working to support you in this too. A couple of years ago, I was in a South Side Chicago neighborhood called Roseland, discussing an effort to extend the Red Line further south so people in the community could access the opportunity downtown. I couldn't help but do some mental math because there was a community called Roseland, Indiana, close to South Bend, where I grew up. It's about 90 miles away, but if you were in Roseland, Indiana, and you have a car, you can get to downtown Chicago more quickly than if you're in the Roseland neighborhood in Chicago and don't have a car. We're changing that. We're changing that to make sure that that kind of mobility is not a barrier to people getting the kind of good-paying jobs that are going to help them build up their families. And we were in Buffalo last year, where half a century ago, federal funding was part of the problem, as the Kensington Expressway cut off what had been a thriving neighborhood from the rest of the city, a story I know you have seen played out in just about every community in the U.S. We're working to change that. I met an extraordinary woman named Stephanie Barber Geeter, whose organization called the Restore Our Community Coalition fought to restore that neighborhood for the better part of her life. And before she sadly passed away a few days ago, she saw the commitment of federal and state funding that she'd been seeking her entire life to deck over that highway, create connections where there had been divisions. Along with it, that thing that very few mayors are able to access, new land to use for community benefit, with help from this administration. Transportation infrastructure is one of those realms of public policy that every person in this country interacts with every single day, and as mayors, you understand how much depends on delivering the basics. Those unsexy things that mayors spend a lot of time thinking about and working on, not just transportation, but water and wastewater and trash and snow removal, police and fire departments. The very foundation of the human hierarchy of needs, starting with safety. Safety, by the way, is why our department exists. It's why we're making sure that we elevate roadway safety, as I described a little bit earlier, And on that, I want to lift up the partnership that we have with mayors who now represent over 70% of our nation's population participating in our Safe Streets for All program. And we got a new round opening up in February for planning funds, so please talk to your planning departments about that. When I was here last year, I highlighted some of the cities that have already seen a year or more with 0 traffic deaths. Hoboken, New Jersey, Evanston, Illinois, Edina, Minnesota. And now there are many more cities using Safe Streets for All funds to pursue their Vision Zero plans, including Minneapolis, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Spokane, Mount Rainier, Salinas, California. Salinas? Thank you. Hundreds and hundreds of communities benefiting from this. If you're not already part of that, I hope you'll consider it. And while we're at it, I want you to know that we're working to make sure our safety mission benefits people in every mode of transportation. I have to remark that as we near the 1-year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern derailment in East Palestine, while I am proud of the work that the DOT team has done to use the full range of our authority to improve rail safety nationwide, including holding railroads accountable, supporting first responders, protecting rail workers, there is a Bipartisan Railway Safety Act sitting in Congress waiting its turn right now. Let's not allow America to get to that 1-year mark and not have that Railway Safety Act become law. And I think your voices need to be heard in this because mayors and your emergency services departments shouldn't be in the dark about what's coming through your communities. We're doing our part with the authorities that we have. Congress ought to be helping, and we're calling on Congress not to get sucked into any of the other things that seem to be commanding attention over there that don't add value while this continues to sit waiting its turn. I know traffic lights and bike lanes and potholes and some of the other things that mayors work on aren't always considered sexy, but they are profoundly important. And not just because potholes are the bane of every mayor's existence, at least that's my recollection, but because those basics are the foundation for everything else. And that's where I think we need to keep a level of fidelity to a philosophy of public works that recognizes the intimate relationship between the most important and difficult things people have going on in their lives. I would even say the meaning of life and the most basic workaday things that municipal government takes care of. You make sure these things get done so that people don't have to worry about it. If the meaning of life for you is to be a good parent to your kids, you can't fully be present for that if you're not home in time because the road isn't in good shape. If the meaning of life for you has to do with your faith, you're not in a position to concentrate on that if you are distracted by uncertainty about whether drinking water is poisoning your children. If the meaning of life for you has something to do with entrepreneurship, you won't be able to fully live a life of your choosing if the public works that you count on aren't available and you have to worry about working around them. Something even bigger is at stake right now, which is the fate of our democracy. President Biden often says that the ability of democratic nations to deliver is being put to the test right now. When the basic economic, political, and social conditions of our civilization deteriorate, including our infrastructure, public trust deteriorates with it in a vicious cycle that costs the legitimacy of democracy itself. On the other hand, when we deliver on those basics, including infrastructure, people feel the benefits of their democracy through a better quality of life. It's why filling holes in the road, or filling holes in the national EV charging network, or filling holes in our supply chain are all investments, not just in U.S. transportation, but in the durability of our democracy. As a fellow former mayor of mine, Andy Burke, once put it, good city government tears down the obstacles that stand between people and a life of their choosing. By making sure people have the basics taken care of, you are helping to preserve their very freedom. There's always a lot at stake for America's mayors and America's cities, just as there always is here in Washington, but that is exceptionally true in our time, as our nation struggles to deliver on its promise. And as Americans sometimes question whether democracy can deliver for them. So much depends on your work and ours. But we are now here to support that work with resources that have not existed in my lifetime to help cities get their job done. Yes, we are with the federal government and here to help. But this time we're backing it up with the funding as well as the technical support as well as anything else you need. So I just want you to know how energized I am by the excellent and extraordinary work of America's mayors, and how confident I am that as challenging, troubling, and even dark as the last 5-10 years have been in many ways, we are going to remember the 2020s, America's infrastructure decade, thanks to President Biden's leadership, and America's democracy decade, if we get right the assignment before us at every level from the federal to the local. We will look back with great pride on this moment and what we were able to do together. And I'm here with you every step of the way. Thank you for your great work, and thank you for the chance to join us.
Our morning plenary session is now adjourned. Lunch will begin at 12:30. Please exit the room at this time so the hotel can reset the room for lunch. And we will see you back here at 12:30. Thank you.